The first time I walked into Eli Miller's farm kitchen outside Berlin, Holmes County, in the middle of August, I expected noise. I expected a fan rattling in a window. I expected the stale bite of trapped heat, hot paint, and yesterday's cooking. What I found instead changed something in me. The air felt wrong. Wrong in the best way. Outside, the lane shimmered at 91 degrees. Inside, my forearms cooled first, then my neck. I could smell damp cotton, pine boards, and bread rising somewhere deeper in the house. Light came through the west windows in narrow bands, but the room itself stayed soft and dim. No compressor started, no vent hissed, no thermostat clicked. I stood there for 11 minutes looking for the expected thing. It wasn't there, and that was the moment I understood I had been wrong about everything. You do not always need a machine to make a room livable. Sometimes you need water, shade, air movement, and enough honesty to copy physics that already works. I have been going back to Holmes County every summer for 3 years. Every visit teaches the same lesson. The building industry did not forget this by accident. It left it behind because selling sealed boxes and powered cooling turned comfort into a monthly bill. The first clue was the window itself. The sash was raised only 7 inches. A length of damp cloth sat in the shade like laundry. Beneath it, a simple tray held water. Above it, warm outdoor air moved without force and came through cooler than it entered. No mystery, no miracle, just phase change and patience. Then I noticed the room next door. The family had pushed the day's work toward the cooler side of the house. A loaf cooled on a board, a pitcher sweated on the table. The heat from cooking stayed outside in the summer kitchen. The sleeping rooms upstairs stayed shut until evening. Nothing here depended on one expensive machine. Every move shared the load. That is what changed me. Modern cooling teaches you to wait for equipment. Older cooling teaches you to shape conditions. You block the sun first. You vent the high heat next. You move air where bodies actually sit. Then, only then, you cool the moving air with water. Once you see that order, the whole system becomes obvious. Here is the promise. You can build a working, low-cost air cooler with common materials. You can spend as little as $15 to $28. You can feel the temperature shift the same afternoon. And yes, this works even if your house was built 50 years ago. It works if you live in a city. It works if you have never done this before. It works if you do not have land. Stay with me, because what I found in Holmes County uses the same physics the Persians used. They cooled desert air over water nearly 3,000 years ago. The science is older than every brand in your house. The United States Department of Energy says evaporative coolers cost about 1/2 as much to install as central air conditioners. The same DOE guidance says evaporative coolers use about 1/4 as much energy. That matters a lot, especially when summer bills stop feeling like weather and start feeling like punishment. Here is the mechanism. When water changes from liquid to vapor, it pulls heat from the air. The 2024 review in buildings explains it plainly. Evaporative cooling is an endothermic process driven by latent heat of vaporization. As water evaporates, the air cools. Think of a wet bandana on your neck. Your skin is the heat source. The water steals that heat as it disappears. Your body already knows this. Sweat is not decoration. Sweat is a survival system. This cooler copies the same move with cloth, airflow, and a small water reserve. Air passes through damp fibers. Heat leaves with the phase change. The fan only assists contact. The water does the deeper work. There is one limit. Dry air gives more. Humid air gives less. That is not a flaw. That is the wet bulb rule. The lower the humidity, the farther the dry bulb temperature can fall toward wet bulb temperature. In plain language, thirsty air drinks water faster and cools faster. Saturated air has less room left to help you. The analogy you already understand is a car radiator in reverse. A radiator dumps engine heat into moving air. This system dumps room heat into evaporating water. Same exchange, different direction. Same logic, the 2024 Buildings Review reports a coefficient of performance around 15 to 20 for evaporative systems, with some multi-stage versions reaching 35. Conventional refrigeration systems usually live around 3 to 4. That means roughly 15 to 20 units of cooling effect for every 1 unit of electrical input. A conventional system gives about 3 to 4. That gap is not small. It is a business model. The United States Department of Energy also notes that heating and cooling dominate household energy use. Once you understand that, the missing incentive becomes obvious. Lower energy comfort sells less hardware. Lower energy comfort sells fewer upgrades. The U.S. HVAC market now sits above $31 billion a year, and service adds billions more. That gap represents a massive market in equipment, replacement parts, refrigerants, and maintenance contracts every year. And that is why you have never heard of this. I first saw the living proof in Holmes County, Ohio, not in a lab. I walked into a white farmhouse outside Mount Hope just after noon, when the gravel itself felt hot through my boots. I heard chickens. I heard a horse shifting in harness. I did not hear machinery. The lower room stayed cool enough that my camera lens stopped fogging after I stepped back outside. Eli stood beside a shaded window and touched the cloth with 2 fingers. Then Eli said something I wrote down that night, because I knew I would need it later. If air can move, let it move through something cooler first. That sentence sounded simple. It also sounded like 200 years of trial and error compressed into 11 words. This was not a novelty. Eli told me the same setup had been used in some form for 4 generations. It predated rebates, catalogs, and showroom promises. The cloth changed. The trays changed. The principle did not. That is how the old order survived. I asked where Eli learned it. Eli did not point to a store. Eli pointed to a grandmother, then to a father, then to a neighbor. That answer matters. Real skills survive through households first. The Amish did not need a branded kit. The Amish needed a house that stayed usable after dinner, during chores, and through a string of hot nights. In Holmes County, many Amish families came through Pennsylvania after earlier movement from Switzerland and German-speaking Europe. The county tourism history for Holmes County traces Anabaptist settlement there to the early 1800s. It links those migrants to Swiss homelands by memory and terrain. In Lancaster and beyond, Pennsylvania German building traditions carried banked houses, spring-fed storage, summer kitchens, and controlled ventilation. Those habits came through Canton-Bern, the Palatinate, Alsace, Bavaria, and Württemberg. The Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission notes that some early stone houses were built over springs. That gave running water and cool basement storage. The same record says detached summer kitchens kept cooking heat out of the main house. The 1934 USDA Farmers Bulletin 1738 farmhouse plans still recommended south-facing summer breezes, cross-ventilation, and gable louvers for cooling. Once you see that line, the older map appears. In Yazd, Persia, wind catchers sent air down through towers and sometimes across subterranean water channels. The Dowlatabad Garden wind catcher still rises about 33 meters or 108 feet above the ground. In Korea, Hanok builders used open maru floors made of wood. The floor stayed raised and vented. Summer air passed beneath your body without holding moisture. Different language, same attention. Go farther back and the pattern sharpens. Some of the earliest wind-catching technology appears in Egypt about 3,300 years ago. Persia refined it with towers, internal blades, and water-cooled passages. In Roman houses, shaded interior courts and water basins moderated heat long before anyone said HVAC. In medieval German and Swiss regions, banked buildings used earth itself as insulation. Different materials, same physics. The Persians did not read this in a textbook. They figured it out the way all real knowledge gets discovered, by paying attention to what the earth was already doing. So did Korean builders. So did Pennsylvania Germans who banked houses into hillsides and built over springs for constant cool storage. Every civilization that mastered extreme heat arrived at the same answer independently. The Amish never forgot. They carried it from Canton-Bern and neighboring German-speaking regions to Pennsylvania and Ohio more than 200 years ago. They kept building it because it worked. They kept building it because they never needed anyone's permission to do what made sense. Now comes the part that should make you angry. In May 1922, Willis Carrier unveiled the centrifugal chiller that opened large-scale comfort cooling to theaters, stores, offices, and eventually homes. That machine did not just cool buildings, it changed what builders expected to sell. Every comfortable house mattered. A house cooled by shade, moving air, and water threatened profit. It cut into compressors, ducts, refrigerants, and service calls. Then came the chemical lock-in. In 1930, General Motors and DuPont formed Kinetic Chemicals to mass-produce Freon. Safe refrigerants made mechanical cooling easier to market. Easier marketing meant wider adoption. Wider adoption meant more equipment. More equipment meant recurring service, recurring replacement, and recurring fuel and power demand. That is beat one. The origin was not comfort alone. The origin was protectable hardware. Beat two is the mechanism. The suppression happened through standards, comfort models, and design culture. ASHRAE's own history says air conditioning freed buildings from passive constraints. The same history praises offices of infinite depth. Fenestration barely matters in that logic. Then ANSI ASHRAE Standard 55 arrived in 1966, with comfort rules built around mechanically controlled indoor conditions. Later, the Center for the Built Environment at the University of California, Berkeley made the bias plain. Naturally ventilated buildings had been previously very difficult to fit within that narrow band. The adaptive model did not enter Standard 55 until 2004. There it is. One sentence, one standard, one long preference for sealed rooms. Beat 3 is the alliance. Carrier Engineering sold the cooling machinery. General Motors and DuPont sold the refrigerant chemistry through Kinetic Chemicals. Early publishing plants, department stores, and movie palaces became the public proof that bought attention and normalized purchased comfort. Regulation and standard culture then rewarded the sealed, conditioned box because the sealed box bought more hardware. The money flowed in one direction, toward machines. Beat 4 is the result. An entire field of knowledge disappeared from architecture schools, building codes, and everyday home building language. Not because it failed, because it was not profitable. Beat 5 is still happening. In March 2024, the International Code Council Board overrode committee recommendations in the 2024 EX fight. Several electrification and future-ready provisions were moved out of the base code. Appeals came from groups including the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute. Open Secrets shows ARI spent $964,622 on federal lobbying in 2022. Open Secrets shows the National Association of Home Builders spent $2,980,000 on lobbying in 2023. NOB says it wants cost-effectiveness, builder choice, and flexibility. That sounds harmless. It also protects established sales channels. Nobody told you. Not your builder, not your contractor, not the man who sold you a bigger compressor. Comfort rules were written around the hardware that companies could monetize. Naturally ventilated comfort only got official breathing room after decades of bias. Beat 6 is the close. The HVAC systems market in America is worth more than $31.7 billion a year. Every alternative installed is equipment that never gets sold, serviced, replaced, financed, or renewed. Now, if you already own a house and you're thinking this only applies to people with land, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. You don't need to buy equipment. You need a shaded window, a fan, and a weekend. And if you rent, do not click away. This still works for you. You can build the frame loose, not permanent, and set it inside a sash window without drilling one hole. You can do the same thing on a shaded balcony door. You can even scale it down to a 14-inch floor fan and a narrower cloth panel for one sleeping corner. The rule stays the same. Cool the air you actually occupy, not the whole building. One bed, one desk, one chair where your body spends the worst hour of the day. That is how low-cost cooling becomes realistic. Use the house like a sequence, not a box. At sunrise, shut the sunny rooms. By noon, pull curtains on west glass. At 3 p.m., run the cooler only where you sit. After sunset, open upper windows first, then lower windows, and let the day escape upward. If you have a basement, steal the cool from there with a simple floor fan at the stair. If you have a porch, pre-cool the intake air in shade before it ever reaches the cloth. Old houses were never one-device houses. They were layered houses. This cooler works best the same way. Small moves, stacked correctly. Honest comfort for the worst summer hours you actually live through. Start with a window that never gets hammered by full afternoon sun. East facing is good. North facing is better. Measure the lower opening, not the whole frame. You want a clear span between 22 and 28 inches wide, and at least 24 inches high. If your window is larger, fine. You only need to cover part of it. Build a simple panel first. Use 2 pieces of 1/2 inch Schedule 40 PVC cut to 24 inches, and 2 more cut to 22 inches. Dry fit them into a rectangle. Stretch muslin cotton across that frame so the cloth sits tight, not loose. A 24 by 30 inch piece works well. Secure it with stainless staples, zip ties, or cord. Then add 1 strip of cotton wick rope, 3/8 inch thick, along the top edge so water spreads evenly across the fabric. If you want the cleaner version, add 2 90-degree elbows, 2 T-fittings, and short 4-inch feet at the base. That keeps the panel upright in the tray. It also lets you lift the frame out for cleaning. You can paint the PVC flat white. You can leave it bare. Bare works fine. Now give the panel water. Set the frame in a plastic tray that measures roughly 24 inches by 16 inches and at least 2.5 inches deep. Fill the tray with 1.25 to 1.75 gallons of clean water. Let the lower inch of the muslin sit in the tray. If you want steadier wetting, hang 2 more wick ropes from the top bar so both sides stay damp. Add 1 tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide per fill or 1 teaspoon of unscented household bleach every 3 days to slow slime. If you want longer runtime, drop a $9 to $16 aquarium pump into the tray. Run 1/4 inch vinyl tubing to the top bar. Poke 3 tiny holes in the tubing. Space them 6 inches apart. That creates a drip line. A small binder clip on the return loop works as a crude valve. It is not elegant, it works. Behind that panel, place a 20-inch box fan on the room side, not the outdoor side. Keep the fan 6 to 8 inches behind the cloth. Use the low or medium setting. Most box fans draw 45 to 75 watts there, which is tiny compared with compressor cooling. The fan must pull air through the wet cloth, not blast directly into it. That detail matters because pulling reduces droplets, keeps the cloth evenly wet, and gives you cooler air instead of a damp mess. Now shape the room. Close blinds on west glass. Close doors to unused hot rooms. Open 1 exit point on the far side of the house by 2 to 4 inches. If you have a ceiling fan, run it low and reverse only if the room already feels stratified. You are building a path, not just a breeze. Air likes paths. One more thing matters even more. An opposite window, door, or high transom needs a 2-inch to 4-inch crack open so air can leave. Wet cloth without exhaust turns the room sticky. Exhaust is not optional. A sealed room causes humidity buildup, weaker evaporation, and a sour smell by evening. If you want more output, add a second frame. Put both panels side by side across a 48-inch opening. You can also stack 2 smaller frames in a porch doorway. If you do that, use a stronger fan in the 90 to 120 watt range. Keep each wet panel within 8 inches of the airflow path. Shade helps more than you think. Add low-E radiant foil or plain exterior shade cloth outside the glass first. The room drop improves immediately because you stop part of the heat before it enters. The first build takes 40 minutes. A cleaner version with a painted frame takes 1 Saturday morning. Your materials cost stays low. Schedule 40 PVC runs $7 to $14. Muslin cotton runs $6 to $12. A tray costs $4 to $9. Wick rope costs $3 to $8. Hydrogen peroxide costs $1 to $3. A small pump costs $9 to $16. If you already own the fan, the whole setup lands around $21 to $46 without the pump. Even with a new fan, you usually stay between $43 and $78. With every upgrade included, you still land far below $120. On a 95-degree day with dry summer air, this setup can send air into the room at 78 to 82 degrees. In deep shade, you can sometimes beat that. The skin level effect feels stronger because the air is also moving across you. That matters more than most thermostats admit. This is not theatrical cold. This is usable cold. If you live where humidity climbs hard by evening, use the cooler hardest from late morning through early evening. Then flush the house at night with outside air. That is exactly how older houses were meant to work. They shed daytime heat in layers. They recharge after dark. The cooler becomes one part of a cycle, not the whole plan. Keep the cloth clean. Rinse the tray once a week in active season. Wash or replace the muslin once a summer. Replace wick rope every 1 to 2 years. If your water is hard, soak the cloth in white vinegar for 20 minutes once a month. If algae appears, scrub the tray with diluted peroxide and sun-dry it before refilling. That knowledge never disappeared. It was filed away, it was waiting. And compare the math. A conventional central system costs $6,500 to $14,500 to install. It often costs $90 to $240 per month to run in hard summer. It lasts 12 to 18 years before landfill or scrapyard claims it. This costs $21 to $78 total in the simplest version. It lasts 3 to 6 seasons per cloth panel and far longer for the fan and frame. Your choice. Everything I have covered across this channel lives in one place now. Root cellar cooling, summer kitchen airflow, spring house food storage. Step by step, season by season, room by room, in the order families actually use it. I built it as a resource, not a sales pitch. Something you can return to in July, in October, and in the first week your power bill turns stupid. The link is in the description. But stay here, because what Eli built is the part nobody is talking about yet. If you believe real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect someone else's profit, you already know what to do. Hit subscribe. Not for me, for what comes next. Because this is not a channel. This is a quiet movement of people who have decided they are done being sold what they already own. I want to hear from you. Drop your state, your July electric bill, or the cooling trick your grandfather trusted in the comments. Tell me whether you want to cool one bedroom, one porch, or the whole hot side of your house first. I read every single one. Your answers decide what I cover next. Next week, I am going to show you what a 1946 Penn State document reveals. You can cool a whole room with lime wash, shade cloth, and night air. The materials cost less than a restaurant bill. The effect lasts longer than a power outage, and the report proves building science knew this decades before salesmen stopped mentioning it. You are not going to want to miss that one.